Hello, everyone, and welcome to a Tuesday edition of the MSP Initiative Live. Going to go through some quick housekeeping. By the way, today's the official start of summer, although I'm sure you guys are already on vacation mode, but today is the official start of summer, according to all of the, experts. So let's get through some quick housekeeping, and then we'll jam. So as everybody knows, MSPinitiative.com under sessions, this and every other session we've ever done since March of 2020, you know what that is in podcast and video format. Stay tuned. We have some giveaways that we'll be announcing with some of our sponsors. Who doesn't love those? We have our MSP community block parties, several that will be announced shortly here in the next few weeks. Can't wait to tell you what we've been cooking up. Oh, it's good. And lastly, Channel Strong. Next week, we'll be on the first leg of the Northeast. So if you are in, scroll down here, Northern Virginia, Baltimore, South Jersey, Philadelphia. It's my neck of the woods. And then, of course, going into the 4th of July weekend, we give everybody a day off. So if you're in the area, we'd love to see you. A couple weeks later, North Jersey, a couple spots in Massachusetts. I believe Thursday's been moved to Albany, New York, and then White Plains kicks us off. And then you see week 7, 6, 7, and 8 here. We'd love to see you guys. We're coming to you. Go to MSPinitiative.com under Channel Strong. If you're an MSP, throw your name in the list, the form here, and we will make sure we get you there. Hopefully no trains, planes, but maybe automobiles. So without further ado, Mr. Mcchord, how are you doing, my friend?
I'm doing well.
What's, I guess we could talk about all of the current events because there's a lot of them. But before we get into, the regular news, talk to us about what's happened over in Zorus land. I will give you a heads up. The last couple of sessions, we've been talking about, the sudden shift in people who have raised money and how all of a sudden it looks like unanimously across the board, anybody who has, and hopefully that's not you. So maybe you can dispel, the people who signed the checks have said, hey, you're going to need to get a little bit more lean and a little bit more profitable. And all of a sudden, you find interesting names on the street. So I'll throw that curveball at you to start. We'll hear a little bit about how Zorus is doing. I hear a lot of good things. I'll throw a couple of other curveballs at you that maybe help your conversation anyway, just things that are happening out and about, and we'll see where we go.
Yeah, absolutely. So just to give you kind of the state of the world here from my desk, Zorus is moving along. We're growing extremely quickly. We raised money. We did a Series A in December of last year.
So right before the curtain dropped on the year, huh?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of my personal portfolio, this is the only time I've ever timed anything well. But yeah, no, we're in a good spot. We've got plenty of runway. We've got plenty of cash. So we're growing, and we're taking advantage of the fact that this is sort of a shaky time for other companies in different spots. And, we're trying to provide, obviously, the best solution for our partners and stability. And we're looking forward to a more favorable job market for, future Zorus employees as we continue to grow in our engineering team specifically. I think that the general market, so obviously my brother, Austin Mcchord, runs a venture firm. I think in that world, things are crumbling and really scary. But in our world, in the MSP space, things are really great. These economic downturns, and I was at Datto during the 2008 downturn and kind of the aftermath of that. It was a really phenomenal time for managed service providers because some of these companies that are right on the line between internal IT and managed services decide, hey, you know what? I might make the plunge and work with a managed service provider as opposed to having an in-house IT team. So that drums up some real excitement for MSPs, and those customers, usually are very satisfied with their decision, even when the economy turns back, to the green. They say, hey, I should have been working with an MSP for a lot longer, because MSPs obviously offer the ability to
you
you
make
know,
a valid argument, right? Usually when things go south and people have to conserve on what we call the street, right? The people in front of the MSPs, technology is one of those places, technology marketing, some of those things, right? Kind of, are the first ones to get slimmed down internally, which means if they're cutting down internal staff, then where do they go? They can't just shut the lights off and turn the servers off and go home at some point, or the cloud account. I guess the big concern, in the past couple of calls, just because we've seen other kind of companies out of the sandbox, in the sandbox, all like just overnight, right? Kind of like cut people that didn't seem like they were, going to be cutting ahead of, before time. It's just, I think there's a little bit of grayness on how this works, right? When you go out and raise money, and how the rounds work, and what metrics you have to hit in order to, check the box, right? And make the people on the other side happy. And like at any point in time, does that change, right? Like, do you have to, is it like, hey, you hit it, good to go? Or, hey, you're close, that's good enough? Or, hey, we've changed it on you, right? Like, I just don't think people understand how that works.
yeah. So, and interesting experience that I had at Datto raising money, in a time when basically any SaaS company couldn't lose. Datto had a really hard time raising capital because it was a hardware company. There was a hardware component to the business that we provided. And so, in economic downturns, what you'll see is that you just have to be that much more attractive to investors. And you'll see that fundamentals matter a lot more. And when you say fundamentals, it's really just thinking about, your run rate or your, yearly revenue, what glide slope are you on? And then it's sort of like, what is the multiple of that? And we saw kind of at the craze, the hype, hundreds times multiple yearly revenue as a valuation for your company. And that was when investors were saying, well, fundamentals don't matter. And then that got all the way up to the public markets, when they're just sort of, any IPO in 2021 was just getting, blown out of proportion. And now when things tighten up, fundamentals matter. And so it's kind of nice to have the experience at Datto where fundamentals were kind of everything. And the multiples that we raised on at Datto were sub 10, which is unheard of when it comes to a technology company. But that was our first investment from unknown founders that had no prior history. And so it was a high risk investment for General Catalyst, who was our Series A at Datto. But yeah, no, we've got some investor partners. Obviously, General Catalyst is working with Zorus. So they, I know them, but it's nice to have sort of raised in a difficult situation, because I know what the expectation is when things get difficult, and it does come down to fundamentals and just making sure that you're being intelligent with your cash. And when you're raising again in a tough market, then you just have to have more prep work of, okay, where is it going specifically, as opposed to in a really, bullish market, they just throw the cash at you and try to close you as quick as possible so they don't lose you, because everyone's just fighting over deals. In this world, it's a little different. And again, I'm happy that Zorus is not in the position that we need to raise capital right now, because uncertainty is definitely just the worst to have in a market. And I think that, when Zorus does need to raise capital, or whatever our next event would be, there won't be the same amount of uncertainty, just because the time from, uncertainty is just always like right when things start getting bad. And at least they'll have some certainty of where the world is going, just because they'll have been on that path for, a year from now, kind of thing.
No, it's good. It's good feedback. So, can't not ask the question, how does it feel seeing, the Datto Kaseya story kind of unfold? Or, is that like hey, we accomplished what we set out to do and good for them? Or is it, would have liked to maybe see something else? Or, hey, I'll get back in the ring, I'll show you guys how to run it. Where do you fall on the spectrum?
Honestly, I don't feel strongly one way or the other, mostly because I guess, from my point of view, it's how are the partners getting treated, and what is the product lines going, where are they going? And that's information that just isn't there yet. It hasn't come to fruition. So I don't know. I think that the MSP space, the vendor side of the MSP space, is always sort of consolidating and then breaking out and then consolidating and breaking out. And so this is sort of like an ultimate consolidation, and so it's a lot of unknown from my perspective, like how does that really impact partners and how does that impact the product lines, and will they be able to sort of manage such a wide range of product solutions and still be able to give that MSP touch, and you've got people probably that are, new to the MSP space at high levels of that company. So, there's a lot of moving parts to it. But again, I'm not that close to it. I left Datto in late 2018. So much has happened since I left Datto. So I don't really know. I'm just cautiously optimistic that they continue to give the partners the treatment that we gave them, my brother and I, and everyone who worked at Datto when I was there. I'm optimistic that they're going to see that as a real differentiator and something that they want to continue to hold true to their, to have Datto.
Do we see a Mcchord reunion at DattoCon in DC?
Oh, I will be there. I don't know if Austin's going. You'd have to ask him. But I will be there for sure.
All right, we'll definitely have a few beers to catch up on there. So interestingly enough, I think it was like maybe 2.5, 3 weeks ago, all the people that were still running on the original Open DNS agreements, now under the Cisco brand, got a notice saying, "Hey, we're turning this off." Like when your renewal comes up, there is no more renewal. You're going to be end of life. And we're like, "Oh, well, that's interesting. So like, what now?" Did you hear that story? Did that make it to the Zorus offices?
Yeah, it certainly did. Absolutely. And it's actually something, we're having an engineering offsite this week here in Norwalk, Connecticut. And it's something that we talked about this morning. So just, a few hours ago, we were talking about, how that impacts them and how to, help partners and help MSPs. I think that, the story has been pretty consistent that that larger brand doesn't seem to, I don't want to say doesn't value it, but it certainly seems like the innovation's not necessarily there. And I don't know that they're thinking about MSPs when they're working on that solution. And even just this move is that really what's in the MSP's best interest, or is that what's in the company's best interest to consolidate and cut costs, or kind of just move everybody to one solution? I don't know what their motives are, but I do know that it's I think that MSPs deserve better, and I've always had that kind of mentality when it comes to enterprise vendors who enter the MSP space, and mostly because it's like I would go to those ASCII events, and it would just be every year, we're launching a new channel program. We're launching a new channel program. It's like, well, what happened to the other one? And what happened to all, and these people, it's like every time they're like, oh yeah, this big company cares about the channel, and we hired all these channel chiefs and this and that. And then they cut it, and it's like, oh, this is so sad. And this is so, the MSPs deserve better. The MSP market, and I saw from investors that they were just like, we don't care about this deal size. It's too small. Have you thought about going direct, going enterprise? And it's like, no, because the MSP market is, really a legitimate market that has a ton of growth and ton of excitement and some great business owners. And so, I think the moral of the story is that MSP owners deserve better, and we're trying to deliver a better solution and deliver better treatment to the MSP market as a whole.
I remember a conversation we had, I don't know, 2020, I think 2021 maybe, where you were saying on the early Datto days, you had to like explain to these guys coming in from the outside, like, how does the thing work, right? Like they don't really get. Where at the time they, the idea is that they really didn't get MSP land, right? And why it worked and how it functioned and what's the best way to approach it. So kind of like fast forward into 2022 now, like come full circle a little bit.
Yeah. No, and early on, it was interesting, like our, some of the first board meetings that Datto ever had, it's just a constant conversation. When are you guys going direct? When are you going to do direct? It's like, that's not channel friendly. No, we're not going to do that. And we didn't, and we were able to build a really legitimate business, being channel friendly, being channel.
Yeah, 100%. So, I think a lot of people maybe if they saw or heard of Zorus somewhere along the line, I'm not sure they've seen like what's happening today. Where have you taken the product so far, right? I think like let's just get like hey, I'm at the dealership, I'm walking around, I'm trying to see what the stickers look like. What does this car do for me?
Yeah, absolutely. So, more recently, we've been working on essentially marrying the proxy and the DNS solution in ours. So we have sort of a hybrid approach because the reality is internet protocols are getting more complicated. And so, for your content filter, it needs to be able to keep up. And different sites just need different treatments in the way you want to filter it and how you want to, protect people, but still give them the freedom and the access. We've been working on essentially just making sure that MSPs as a whole can be able to deploy this solution to all of their customers and not generate a ton of feedback. Unlike working at Datto, when, if you missed a backup, it was a big deal, but it wouldn't necessarily mess up their, business operations. And you could work on it in off hours. This is a completely different solution. So it needs to have a much better uptime. It needs to have a much better consistency rate, because if something goes wrong, you block a site that they really do need to visit, that's generating a support ticket. It's generating a lot of, negative sort of feedback to the MSPs. And we have sort of a philosophy in engineering, which is, kind of don't mess with the customer. And that's the end customer. And it's basically, everything that we do, every release that we make, everything new product wise, our goal is to just never generate tickets for the MSP, because it could ruin their profit margin really pretty quickly, because it's not a super expensive service. That's on the content filtering side. On the productivity monitoring side, we're really looking at what is the definition for productivity, and how can we be able to just create some easy to digest graphs and reports on what employees are doing. And because I think that this service to me is really interesting, as it's a net new service that MSPs can deploy to customers. And when I think about MSPs and I think about how the IT landscape has changed, I think that there's more products that are end of lifing or more revenue that's in jeopardy than there is net revenue products being generated. And when I say that, I think about like all of the servers and hardware that MSPs had as part of their bottom line and had profit margin built into is, essentially eroded or being eroded. And so, where are the new solutions that are going to be that and then more to represent a growing business, which every MSP wants to, grow their revenue year over year. And that's where our Triton, our productivity monitoring solution, is one that, the majority of MSPs that we talk to are not reselling a productivity monitoring solution. And the demand is there, considering, where employment is, and that people want hybrid, they want flexibility, they want work from home. There's a need for it. And I think that MSPs should be more involved in those conversations, and providing a solution like that doesn't necessarily have to be ours, but it is an interesting net new revenue generator for them.
Yeah, no, it's a good point. So do you, like, when you position yourself and like like these two things come as part of the same price point, right? So like on one side you could have like the the monitoring platforms out there. I can think of two or three right at the top of my head. And on the other side you have kind of like the DNS kind of, hey, make sure that you're not going to a bad place part. And then like the content filtering part, I guess comes along with that, right? Like that's like a bonus to the core solution, right? So when you kind of smash these two things together, you could be like, to your point, if you're not already offering this, it's something new that you're adding to your stack. But in reality, you could be smashing like two or three products together into the one.
Yeah, I mean, I see it as, and I think the most successful MSP partners that we work with see it as sort of, redefining what is endpoint protection, and basically every machine that is deployed to an end customer this is something that should be included in their package. It should be obviously keeping them away from threats on the internet. It should have content filtering, but it also should have some monitoring in place. As essentially that's part of security. When you think about it, I don't know how many decks I've seen where people are like, security companies are like, hey, your biggest threat are your employees. It's like, okay, well, it's one thing to just sort of try to keep them protected, but not really understand how they interact with the IT stack. And it's another to say, okay, we understand how this employee does interact with the stack, and that can make some informed decisions about how you change the IT stack, gets the MSP involved in SaaS conversations. There's just a lot of benefits to it in my mind, as we see, I think that, we could break, fix, managed services, VCIO. I think VCIO is where MSP should go. But that's obviously, a somewhat biased opinion. It's just a personal opinion of mine.
No, I think VCI, it's something I think everybody thinks they're already doing. I don't know if they actually package it as that particular, with that term, but it's, like, listen, let's get into the more strategic stuff, right? I mean, that's really what we're trying to do. So one second. So if somebody's using the Zorus DNS solution, like instead of their traffic, their DNS traffic going to Google or to the ISP's traffic, it's going to hit your data centers first, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so of course,
and it's going to hit our agent, which is already have, depending on whether you're using the proxy or the DNS side, because we're updating the agent obviously constantly, because you don't want to introduce insane amounts of latency to every single device that's working.
That's what I was just about to ask, right? I feel like every time there's an outage, and I think today Zoom had an outage, believe it or not. So not like, the big boys don't have their own problems, but I feel like it's always DNS, right? So that's why I asked the question.
Yeah, understood.
Yeah, all good. Had a couple people jump on today. I guess we should have made sure we resend out the weekly invites here. So just gotta let everybody have a chance to chime in if they want. Welcome, some of our favorite guests here, like Darren, Creeko, or Brian. Welcome to the call. Of course, we push this out online as well. Sometimes we get some comments on LinkedIn or Facebook, but kind of go into a little bit more of like current events, right? In MSP land, see what's going on as well. So Darren, you on the road this week, or are you back in?
No, I'm not. I'm not. No,
all right.
No travel this week. Thankfully, it's been a little worn at this moment. Yeah. So
okay. Well, yes. Constant traveling, right? I mean, and especially with all the flights getting canceled, right? I feel like it's getting worse.
Yeah, I had some fun flight experiences, but it's all good. So it's not
okay. All
not
right.
worth discussing now. So
no, it's okay. That's all right. So let me throw a curveball at you, Darren. What are you using for DNS? Anything? DNS filtering, content filtering?
We're using. I'm going to get yelled at for.
Okay.
We're using the WebRoot has a DNS add-on for their endpoint protection, which for better or worse, that's what we're using. Will we always use it? Probably not, but it is what we're using now. So.
And you've been on that for some time.
It's been, I thought it's going to be 4 years at this point almost. So yeah.
Okay. Once you're done, once you're done with all the other projects on there, you may take a second look.
Exactly. It's one of those things that there will be a need for change at some point, but and in large part we stayed with WebRoot as an overall solution because of their integration with Blackpoint, and kind of we've been comfortable with that. So not that we can't change the DNS, and probably should, but we'll get there. So
no, it's okay. That's why I'm just taking the audience feedback here. Crickor, how you doing today? You might be dialed in by phone. No worries. He might be able to jump in. Brian, you with us? I feel like Brian always is on, but maybe not connected. So, okay. Well, let's go into some current events then. So, I mentioned it earlier, but it's worth mentioning again. So today was outage day. So we had, kill this ad here, Zoom, Discord, Shopify, and I guess maybe the retail kind of outlook.com. But yeah, for a good part of this morning, I think Zoom was down. I think about half of their, at least Down Detector said about half of their services were down. This is a UK site, but it was worldwide. So that's always interesting, right? Well, real-time communications. We talk about not disrupting the end customer, right? Ian, so the big boys always have their issues one way or another. If it's not AWS tomorrow, today, it's Zoom tomorrow. It's Crickcore does pipe in on the chat. He is using Zorus tech for DNS. How about that? It's 50% win.
And I should say too, George, what I really need to look to use immediately or very soon is the other solution that they have for employee monitoring. We've had a couple situations come up lately that I want to use it for my own employees too, actually. But that's another story.
Well, definitely need to. I think Ian's actually in Connecticut, but I think listen, everybody's had something in they're probably their company handbook or information acceptable use policy forever, right? That, hey, if you're using company, stuff that, we may monitor you. I think that's accepted, but some states actually require you to put it out as a specific document, right? That you actually have to get people to sign, basically saying, hey, by the way, your state says that we have to advise you, specifically Billboard edition, that we do monitors things. Ian, what, I'm sure you've heard this before, yeah?
Yeah, no. And what really kind of separates our solution from what I would say is sort of the most common solution that you'd see out there, which is ActiveTrack, and that is that we are so much more, I'll say, less intrusive. It doesn't do screen recordings. It doesn't do key capping. And the idea here is that you don't need that, and that is more intrusive than the value. It's diminishing returns. How they, essentially where they're spending, how active are they on the machine, and what apps are they using, and where are they going when they're using the internet, which is basically almost their entire job for a lot of employees, but it does look at local apps too. That gives you the picture that you need without sort of signing yourself up for unnecessary risk. Because, if you take screenshots of employee machines, then, they say that they can be able to block out banking information, but I know that that's not consistent. I know that there's flaws there. And it just seems like unnecessary risk of, you could just drop in on the wrong thing. And I don't know. To me, it's like that's a part of our solution that we'll never add as long as I'm where I am, because I don't think that you need it to understand how, because the solution's about how the employee interacts with the IT stack and interacts and does their job on a daily basis. And I think what's great about it is that you'll find as many sort of employees that are not doing their job as you'll find employees that are doing above and beyond that you didn't know. And I think that one of the biggest crimes of work from home is that the kudos that are getting sent around isn't at the same sort of, what I believe at the same pace as when you're in the office, because you just had a better idea of who's really cranking things out and getting their job done and working efficiently. And this software gives you that idea of engagement, and you can start handing out kudos to people who are like, wow, you're really killing it.
Ian,
Yeah, I go ahead, Darren.
Ian, do you use it internally? I'm just curious if you use it on your own staff.
Yeah. Not all of them, but yes.
Okay, fair question. Thanks.
Yeah. I mean, you have to dog food it. And our culture is, sort of the work from home, and we embrace that, even though I'm actually sitting in the office right now.
Yeah, I mean, drink your own Kool-Aid, right? I mean, so that's definitely important for sure. So one of the other things that pop, we're constantly hearing about Office 365 stuff. Today's latest one that comes out, kind of in the news is, hey, they're doing an actual voicemail phishing campaign, right? Where you get like the voicemail to email. Let me just share this particular one right here. You have voicemail to email, and then basically they send you that, that fake email. It looks like it's coming from Office 365, right? And then it kind of attaches the bad boys, right? And then it's like, hey, click here. You can tell this one doesn't look too good, but that's what they're sending out, right? So, obviously phishing and emails the number one way, right? Other than somebody going to a site that they absolutely should not be on. This is the number one way that people get hit, right? Email. And that's why they say people are the biggest problem in the organization security wise. Ian, I'm sure this doesn't surprise you, right? I mean, obviously you guys are in, a little bit in this security space. So how can you help in situations like that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, again, on the email side, the first thing that they do is they click a link, and most of the time they're clicking a link to a newly registered domain. And that's like one of the biggest top hits for us, is blocking newly registered domains. You'd be really hard pressed to figure out an employee that needs to visit a domain that's been created 10 minutes ago, other than a web designer. Like, that's it. They're buying a domain, but even that, they do that one time for a company, or maybe a couple of times that you buy domains for your company. But that's sort of like the phishing scheme. The idea is that you register a domain, you make it look like Amazon, you try to get as many people to fall for it, and then you close it before, that information of your registered domain can be basically accessible. That it updates with ICANN and all that other stuff. So, being able to block that blocks a lot of phishing requests, because, that's just how they set it up. I think that's the most common one.
I'm surprised it can get their DNS to update that quickly, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
That's the funny part, right? I mean, like, it takes time to propagate new sites over the internet. If they just turned it on 10 minutes ago, man, they got a cool trick.
I mean, but they have the whole site ready to go. They buy the domain and deploy it. Like, all they have to do is deploy the speed. Like, you could have a bot do that as soon as you buy the domain, to just essentially set up the site. And yeah, the DNS is slow. Like, if you follow one of those phishing requests, it's definitely one that takes a long time for all the DNS service to essentially give you that site, because you're going probably right to the host, in that case. But a regular user doesn't know. They think the internet's slow.
Yeah, it's a good point. So, we talk about this all the time. I'm just going to bring this one up, see what your thoughts are, right? But should MSPs, and cyber, get cyber insurance? I know the answer is yes, right? How does solutions, like, I feel like what's happening now, Ian, is, the end party cybersecurity, questionnaire is getting pretty beefy. But before you can worry about your end customer, you got to have your own, house in order. And then they start asking a lot of questions, right? What solutions are you using? Do you have these checkbox covered? Are you following kind of best practices, security, hygiene type stuff? So I'm sure you've heard about this. I'm sure you've heard people complaining that it's getting harder and harder to get the right coverage for the right price without, jumping through a lot of, hoops of fire. What do you recommend from an MSP standpoint to, number one, they should definitely have something, but number two, like, I feel like there's definitely a set of things that they need to have, number one, and number two, I hope that the insurance agencies out there, not to, knock your old company Datto, but some of Datto's products was on an internal list for some of the insurance vendors, a little while back, saying, for using this, basically we're not going to insure you. I think they've switched since, kind of switched, focus on that, right? And they kind of got off of that. But I feel like moving forward, whoever's consulting with these insurance companies, because these insurance agents don't know technology, they're going to go somewhere else, right? And they're going to ask them, that's who's creating these questionnaires, right? The ones that Darren can't even fill out in a day, right? Because they're 40 pages long. So, like, what are you seeing out there, and what's your recommendation to MSPs on cyber coverage?
I mean, I'm going to go controversial here and just say that I have a big hatred for the insurance industry as a whole, and especially as it's applied to technology. I think that unfortunately there aren't enough newcomers in the insurance industry to be able to really propagate all this information and hire the right people and create the right work culture to sort of stay up on the times. And I just think that if your insurance vendor is giving you the list of vendors for you to buy for the cyber insurance, I don't know. That doesn't seem, I don't know if that's the wisest call. I think that my recommendation is that MSPs have to become their own MSSPs to some degree. And that I don't think that having reliance on an insurance agency to make suggestions for technologies for you to deploy to protect your customers is the wisest move. I think that they'll probably pick sort of the most obvious answers, but an MSP has to balance their profit margin in this whole equation. And they can't afford, like part of the reality is that, you could certainly deploy all these enterprise solutions, but there's two people that can't afford them. One is your end customer, and two, you have no margin, so you can't afford it either. So like, I do think that MSPs have to be nimble and they have to be aware of, where can I get some of the best technology, for the most reasonable price that keeps your business lights on. And I think that, I don't know. I think that vendors, I would love that the MSP community, the MSP vendor community and insurance community to be closer. I've only had a few conversations with them, and it's impossible to kind of meet a decision maker there. So I'm probably not the best person to ask, I suppose, on that decision.
No, hey, you've been clear, right? Like something doesn't seem right if they're handing you a list of you can only live within these bumpers.
George, I got a few things here.
Okay, let's hear it, Darren.
So one of my things about the application is, in doing it last year, and I maybe it will change this year, but it doesn't seem that it's been adjusted enough to take into consideration those that don't have a central office, right? We talked about this before, and there's so many questions that are specifically geared to having your own on-site server and on-site things like that, where are just not, you're either answering them in a obscure way or just kind of ignoring them on these applications. And I think that the industry has to take a look at making that, adjusting that for what the reality is for more and more people, every day here. So that's one of my kind of pet peeves. Oh, did we lose George there? Look.
I think we lost George. No, I would agree with that. And I think that, I haven't filled out this application, so I don't know, but I would imagine that they would want you to have like a central router and have everybody VPN in.
Right. There's specific, lots of specific questions that relate to, clearly these were designed for the normal model, which is, it's harder to, to answer it correctly when, you're kind of working around that. So I hope that changes a bit so that you're not having to kind of ignore things or answer them incompletely. But I just had, going back to what you said, it's been interesting to me that some vendors, security vendors are offering secure insurance as well. And I won't name names, but one that I may have mentioned earlier, and kind of has been pushing their own insurance, which I guess makes some sense, but is also maybe not what you'd expect. And I guess I don't have an opinion on it one way or the other. I just have found it interesting. I was unexpected to find a vendor I'm using for security that then offer their own insurance product as well. So we'll see if that happens more commonly.
So I wonder what happens in that situation, Darren, if they say that their product works but it wasn't configured properly, and they're pointing their finger at the MSP, and then the MSP is like, but you're insuring me. So like they're like, well, but we're only going to give you insurance if you actually use our product properly. And I wonder how that conversation ends up.
Well, no, I mean, I had asked them, I said, well, does that mean that, if I have my own insurance carrier, there might be some issue because they're potentially on the, not on the line, but they're critical in the response part of this whole scenario. So I just found it interesting to see that. And then the last thing, I had a client, this was actually yesterday that I visited with, that they had a 50% renewal, 55% renewal increase. And I had filled out the questionnaire for them, and we added security stuff in the course of the last year. There was a section for what else do we need to know? And unbeknownst to me, my contact at the client went back to the carrier and said, well, hey, did you even look at, the answer was, well, market conditions. And she's like, well, 50% increase is not, it's not acceptable. So can you take another look at, the section we put in the stuff we've added over the year? And, in theory, we've become more secure by doing this other stuff. Long story short, the guy came back and it is now only a 30% increase. So they actually, I didn't think that there was any negotiation part of this, but it seems like there might be. So something that I didn't expect either. So, it was like, after taking another look, we've seen that, yes, we see what you've done and we can do it at this level. So just found that interesting as well.
But negotiation as a service. Let's start a new one, Ian. What do you think?
I mean, honestly, I think an MSP, some more broader MSP insurance agency, it's essentially channel only, would actually be a pretty valuable tool for our partners to have, that could understand that kind of, the price rigidity with your end customer, and just because it's, again, I can't say it enough, the insurance industry, in my past experience, it's just really left a lot to be desired. A data stream, is what
Krigor piped in and said data stream. I think Larry Metters over there, who's been around the channel for quite some time. I haven't looked at their offering, but and I know that there's a couple other ones out there, right? There's Tech Rug, there's one or two others, right? That kind of are channel friendly, maybe not channel only, but it's a very interesting game we play. Ian, what are you hearing about, like, impending legislation, right? Like, we talk about the insurance agents and companies out there not really being tech people, and we see the aftermath of that so
the
far.
government's right behind it.
Yeah, I mean, politicians are not better; they're probably worse. So, like, where are they getting their advice, right, in order to decide what makes sense and what doesn't from a legislation standpoint? But I feel like I don't know if it's the federal level a little bit, but I think even at the state level, something's coming, right, at every level. So, what are your feelings? What are you feeling? What are you seeing there? What are you prognosticating even on what we're gonna maybe see?
I don't really know. Quite frankly, I don't know. Like, predicting what the government's going to do is like predicting what the stock market's going to do. It's just, maybe over the super long term, you can make some estimates, but over the short term, I'm not sure. I think that the best advice for MSPs, though, is to just be prepared to handle the real situations that are occurring. Like, have an action plan for what happens if somebody gets ransomware? What happens if somebody gets hit with a phishing attack? I mean, again, I think that that's the game to play, is to just make sure that you're prepared to handle what happens to your customer. Because, like, even when you talk about the insurance side of things, if your customer has to get insurance for a cyber attack, well, you've definitely lost that customer. Like, now all has failed. They've had such a large scale problem that they're going to need compensation for it. It means that whatever that backup plan you had probably didn't work, or something got lost. Or stolen or whatever. So, I mean, I think that it's better, your time is better spent thinking about the real situations that actually would happen to your customer than necessarily playing the game of, like, what is the government going to do and how can I fit that into my business? Because it's just difficult to say what they're going to do. Eventually, they may do something with regards to cybersecurity legislation, but it's probably going to take a while, and it might be behind in the times. And I don't know. I think the government's more hands-off than ever. I mean, I think they had a chance to really get involved in regulating crypto, and they've now just sort of settled back into the world of, like, we're gonna go after criminals, but we're not really gonna regulate how it all works. I feel like cybersecurity is probably the same. They're not gonna tell you how to do cybersecurity. They're just gonna get better at trying to investigate the criminals that are doing it on the largest scale, which for an MSP is probably not that useful, because they're getting tacked by smaller scale criminals, through simpler attacks. So
100%. It'll be very intriguing to see, because like right now, cryptocurrency in general is in a very low state right now, right? Because like everybody's confidence level is not great at the moment, because I guess gas is trading higher than crypto sometimes. So but it'll be very interesting to see. I actually read an article the other day, that the US government may try and launch their own digital currency. You'd be like, you know what? You want digital? You're still gonna have to come through us.
yeah, I mean, I think that the US government probably should have launched your address digitally. They don't do that. They still send us mail. So I wouldn't be holding your breath for the US dollar coin that the government created. I mean, come on, right?
Yeah, don't think that's going to be trading on Coinbase anytime soon, huh?
Right.
100%. So right now, right, we got Kaseya's conference over in Vegas, right? I know it's tough to throw an event in Vegas. I don't know. Have you ever been to an event in Vegas that was like, well attended?
Well, we had DataCon in Vegas.
Did you? I don't even remember that DataCon. Maybe that's the problem.
Yeah, I think it might have been our second one, maybe our third. I don't know. It's 2015, 14.
14.
Yeah,
14.
that must have been right
2014.
after
Yeah.
GC. Yeah.
Yeah, it was at the Aria. It was pretty well attended. I think that Rob Ray was certainly very concerned about how do we make sure people don't end up at the tables.
I mean, that's the problem, right? You hit the strip and you never come back.
Yeah,
It's distracting. It's too distracting. I was there, and I've been to other stuff in Vegas. It's just too distracting to really. Yeah, I agree. Anyway,
one thing when you're the NFL and you can shut down the strip for your event, but that's like few and far between, right?
Yeah, no, I'm not clamoring for events in Vegas. It's kind of a long flight from New York, and I don't know. You go there so many times, you're just like, oh my god. I get exhausted just when I land. I'm like, I'm already tired.
Well, good news is that between now and the rest of the year, we have pretty much events across the board. They're back in full force. I think everybody realized that like Florida, Texas, and Vegas, like if you're going to have an event in one of those three areas, it was definitely happening. But hey, so far, COVID hasn't come back, the way that we hoped that it wouldn't. So, I mean, obviously DataCon in DC, we have obviously IT Nation in November, still in Orlando. I think Channel Cons in Chicago coming up here in August. And then people are still doing things all over the country, right? Denver, California, all throughout the East Coast. I know there's stuff going on. Obviously, we have the bus tour still going on, which is going all over the country, and definitely love to see people come out in bigger numbers. What's the favorite? You're like, you go back in time, you've done so many events. What's your favorite channel event you've ever been to? Obviously DataCon, but then which one, right? Don't make me put words in your mouth. If it's not DataCon, it's okay.
No. I think that the DataCon in Nashville was probably my favorite event that I ever went to. If it was a non-Datto event, I mean, I really liked. I want to say that the IT Nation, when it was paired with Q4 of HTG, I really liked those events. And like really early, I want to say like 2013 or 14 was one of my favorites. It was great. I just like the format of how HTG runs their user groups and how the vendors can get the seat at the table and then do the lunch presentation and things like that. I just found it to be a really great event. Yeah, I mean, it's about content. I'm not big on the, keynote speakers. I think a lot of keynote speakers do Q&As now because they're lazy, and those are just so unsatisfying because they're answering the same questions over and over again. I like it when they come with a deck of, sort of telling their story a bit more. Because I just think the Q&A is just, it's always, the questions they're not tough enough. And they don't really lead to a cohesive story of their brand and whatever. And I just always favor events that have a lot of collaboration with the MSPs, where the MSPs get to do a lot of the talking and not just sitting there in a chair listening, because that could really be done. It doesn't need to be in a big venue for that to happen. So, yeah, that's probably for me.
People forget that first DataCon was only like what, 200 people?
250 was the goal. I think we got like 205. It was fun. It was cool. You know, it was interesting. The keynote speaker there was Alexis Ohanian, who, you know, is the co-founder of Reddit and married to Serena. You know, he came with a deck that was about sort of Web3 before Web3 really was a thing. I mean, it was 2013. So, but it really didn't hit actually with our audience. But I enjoyed it. It was interesting. He sweared a whole bunch, but he was talking about building internet businesses, and it was kind of cool to talk to people who own essentially internet businesses. But he was talking more on like the SaaS side and building a website, like a community like Reddit. But I was one of my favorite speakers, actually.
That's awesome. Well, we're coming full circle, right? DataCon DC 2.0.
Yeah. No, it should be good. I'm excited. I hope that there's a lot of community. I mean, I know that, you know, Rob's orchestrating it, so you're going to get some value out of it. You know, I do believe he's very good at running shows and making them entertaining and exciting, worth your time to go to. But
you think we'll see Snoop Dogg again?
I hope not. I'm done with Snoop Dogg. Give me somebody new. And that Snoop Dogg concert at 8:30 in the morning, I was like, it was difficult to get into, you know.
8:30 in the morning. Yeah, that was interesting. But hey, you know, it was something different.
It was new, shake it up. I mean, I loved San Diego, so I had a blast there.
Beautiful, right? You had the you know, the crew, the ship, right? Yeah, they had the party on the boat.
Yeah, that was awesome. That was really cool.
I actually saw when they did the Top Gun kind of red carpet, it was on the same boat.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, that's right. I remember that boat.
I was on there.
All the cool stuff. They'd have
it had video games on it.
yeah. The helicopter didn't land on when we were on it, but it's cool. Darren, you remember that one, buddy?
Yeah, I mean, nothing. You don't have to sell me on San Diego. I mean,
yeah, that's right. He liked it so much, he's there a lot. That's what he didn't tell you.
well, it was before that, but yeah, it's great.
Yeah, he just walked out his front door into DataCon.
Nice.
I'll throw. I know you're a BMW guy, right? You still have that pretty cool ride. Where are you on the electric phase, right? You thinking, you know, you about it? You're like, I'm not so sure. Maybe it needs a little bit more love. Where do you fall on the scale?
I love it. I'm probably next car, you know, the electric. I mean, I think range is always a question. I think that the charger network is so much better now, but it's getting stressed a little bit. And so I'm waiting for like the next gen of that, because it's just, you know, I don't love the idea of not only like a 30-minute wait for the car to charge is fine, but I want that charger ready to go. I don't want to wait 2 hours for the 30-minute charge. So I think that, but I don't really drive long range that often. So I mean, I'm about it. I think it's great. I think centralizing where power generation, I was an environmental studies student at CU, a graduate, I should say at CU. And so, and then my whole thing was natural resources, power generation. And
Wow.
you know, the idea that power generation can be centralized just gives us more flexibility with nuclear and different, you know, solar arrays that could be more efficient. I think there's some opportunity there. So I mean, I'm all about it. I think fossil fuels, there's nowhere for it really to go, you know, like in terms of just the process itself is naturally creating greenhouse gases. Whether or not how much that's impacting the environment is really hard to tell and whatever. But in terms of the innovations, I don't see there are many really exciting innovations that are happening in petroleum. So I think that the other innovations, to give them a chance, you know, for them to really shine, I think a lot of them do involve sort of power generation in a large way, especially for nuclear, is that you can't have your own personal nuclear power plant. But
when was the last time they had a nuclear power plant to fire up? It's been a while.
Yeah, I know. Well, I mean, you know, Japan, that whole disaster did not help. I mean, that was sort of a tipping point too, you know, sort of saying, okay, what happened to Chernobyl is not going to happen again. And Fukushima came around and kind of did, but it was to a lesser extent, but still bad.
Yeah. What about hydrogen? Have you heard anything about that? Or I know Honda was still manufacturing a natural gas Honda vehicle, totally natural gas.
Yeah. I mean, if it gets hit hard enough, it explodes.
That's a problem.
That's hard. That's kind of like a thermodynamics issue, you know, of like, how do you solve that? And if you make it so hard for it to explode, is the car just, you know, going to ruin every road that it drives on? I
It's a
think
good
that
point.
battery technology is probably the way forward for humanity, you know? So anything that advances battery technology is probably good for us overall.
Okay, there
But
it is.
I don't know. That's
See
a
that? You
personal
learned
opinion.
something about Ian Mcchord today. He actually went to school for this stuff. I
I
mean,
really put the degree to use.
well, a lot of people go to college and they get degrees that they never use totally, right? I mean, it teaches them a little bit about how to get into the business world, but they may go a different direction, which I'd say you ended up pretty well off.
I'm not complaining.
There you go. At least you got your funding round investment right finally. So maybe you should like time your personal investments with that and see if it works out.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll see.
It's all good. Ian, I can't wait to see you in person. Are we going to see you? I think we're going to be in Connecticut on the bus at some point. We're going to see you come out, maybe
Sure.
get you to sneak out of your place a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll be
All
there.
right. We'll hang out in the sun and talk shop. But anyway, where do people find out if they're not at an event, right? Like Kaseya right now, where do they find more about Zorus? And if they want to talk to somebody about it, where do they, how do they flag someone?
Yeah, I mean, zorustech.com, that's the place to start for any of these questions to be answered. We're also, we have a Discord community. We have, obviously we're always in our MSP on Reddit, sort of everywhere. We kind of lurk a lot of communities. So, if you want to reach me directly, you definitely can on LinkedIn, or you can even just email me, Mcchord@zorustech.com. I can answer questions or just help you get to the right person, because I check my email obsessively like any other millennial.
Exactly, right? Like you can't
Not
sleep
even
without
millennial,
checking
it's
it.
anybody in this world.
Yeah, your email's like literally like advisor, like me. Go to sleep either. All right, guys. Well, appreciate Ian for coming out. I know it's sometimes interesting to get some cool people to pop on even when you're not on the road, which you can't be on the road all the time. He has people for that now, right? So his people can talk to your people. I don't know. Otherwise,
I hate that concept.
I'm just cliche as best as it is. So appreciate you for coming on. We recorded this session, so we're going to send it out to everywhere where we normally send it out. It'll be on the feed, right? The podcast feed and the video feed. So you guys can go back and check it out. Definitely check out zorustech.com. Definitely check us out on the tour. They're going to be out on the Northeast ones, this upcoming one and the one after that. So all throughout the Northeast, you'll probably see somebody from Zorus. I hear, I haven't confirmed, but there could be a Zorus branded beer on the trip.
Oh, it's confirmed.
Okay, you heard it. A Zorus branded beer. It's like, I don't know what it is, but I bet you it's going to be good. So you better come out and grab one. I might have a beer mug that you can put that beer in. So you put two together and then all of a sudden you're in good shape. Anyway, thanks for popping out, guys. Catch you on the flip side.
Bye.